Are you ready to learn and be inspired? I'm excited to bring our keynote speaker to this stage. Bruce Tulgan is the founder of Rainmaker Thinking, a training and consulting firm in Connecticut. He's internationally recognized as one of the foremost experts on leadership. Bruce is the author or co-author of 21 books, including the best-selling It's Okay to Be the Boss. His newest book, The Art of Being Indispensable at Work, is available now. Bruce's work has been the subject of thousands of news stories around the world. He has written for the New York Times, USA Today, HR Magazine, the Harvard Business Review, and he writes regularly for Training Magazine, Forbes.com, and Psychology Today. Bruce also lectures regularly at the Yale School of Management. Bruce is here today to share his expertise and help you transform the challenges of the generational shift in the workplace and the opportunities for growth and success. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Bruce Tulgan.
Thank you so much for introducing me. Thanks so much for having me. They give me just 60 minutes with you, and I want to talk with you about the great generational shift underway in the workforce. Maybe it's hiding not in such plain sight in your organization, but they only give me 60 minutes. So here's what I want to do in that short amount of time. I want to give you a little bit of new perspective about the great generational shift underway in the workforce. I'm going to give you a couple of new ideas, and I'm hoping to give you some concrete strategies and best practices you can take back with you to the work you do as a leader in your organization to be more effective. But that's it, right? I believe in establishing metrics at the outset of any project. Mike, those are my metrics. So you walk out of here with a little bit of new perspective, a couple of new ideas, and some best practices, I will have succeeded wildly. Before I do that, I just want to make sure you know there's nothing I'm going to share with you this morning that I made up all by myself. I'm not sitting in an ivory tower. I do live in New Haven, but I'm not sitting in an ivory tower making stuff up. Everything I'm going to share with you this morning comes from what is now 32 years of research on the front lines of the workplace. And our research is a little bit different from most because we don't just ask multiple choice questions. We do in-depth interviews. More than 500,000 people from more than 400 organizations have participated in our research over the last 32 years. And our interviews are a little bit different, right? We ask people, how are you being managed? And then we listen. How do you want to be managed? And then we listen. Tell us about your best boss. Tell us about your bosses who were not so good. Right? Why do you go work someplace? Why do you leave? No, seriously, why do you leave? And then we listen. See, and we keep talking with people as long as they're willing to keep talking to us. So what that means is some of our interviews last a couple of hours, but thousands of our interviews have been going on 10 years or longer. Hundreds of our interviews go back to 1993. And as you'll see at the end, I will try to lure you into my interviewee database. But let me tell you what our number one finding is. After 32 years of research, you want to know? Our number one finding? Do you want to know? Because if you don't want to know, we can talk about something different. I mean, it's a small group. Do you want to know? Excellent, thank you. Okay, it's getting harder to manage people. Yes, we've done 32 years of research to come up with that. That guy over there is like, hey, buddy, you could have just called me, right? And if I've interviewed you and you're in this room, I promise not to reveal your identity. But for us, the real interesting thing is, why is it getting so much harder to manage people? And of course, the workplace is becoming more and more high pressure. Everybody's getting squeezed, right? But meanwhile, the workforce is becoming more and more high maintenance. And I've been waiting all morning to say that, maintenance, you know. And everywhere I go, people tell me that, right? And of course, they zero in on the youngest, least experienced people. You know I'm going to talk to you about the great generational shift, right? I bet some of you were thinking, oh, this guy's going to talk about the great generational shift. Are we going to talk about, well, who is it now? Generation Z, right? I've had it up to here with Generation Z. Well, what do they want now? They want a trophy for showing up 15 or 20 minutes late, and then we'll give you a better trophy if you're only 10 minutes late tomorrow. You know, nobody held my hand. I was young once. Right? I know you've said it. I bet you said it this morning. Nobody held my hand. And nowadays, just try to hold their hand. Right? And sometimes when I talk with people about generational change in the workplace, and we've been studying this for 32 years, and people will say to me, why are we talking about this now? Right? Haven't there always been different generations working side by side? I mean, I started out young. Everyone starts out young. God willing, you get older. Right? How is this how is this even an issue? And how is it a diversity issue? And I just want to, I don't want to hide the ball. I just want you to know I'm not one of these people who's going to come up here and talk to you for an hour. And at the end of this, you're going to like go back to work and say to your employees, hey, let me see your driver's license. Right? I want to know what year you were born. Okay, now I'm going to get out my checklist for how to manage you. Right? If there's one checklist for the grown-ups, right? One checklist for the young upstarts, and then a checklist for everyone in between. I think that would be ridiculous. Right? Imagine using any other diversity lens that way. Right? How should we manage women from South Dakota whose grandparents are from Denmark? Right? That's ridiculous. Right? Well, we look through the generational lens to see what it means for you, for business leaders, managers, supervisors, for people at all levels trying to manage their working lives and careers in today's environment, right? And there are three things that are different about generational change in the workplace today. And the number one thing is what we call the numbers problem. The numbers problem. On one end of the spectrum, the workforce is aging. On the other end of the spectrum, the workforce is getting younger. And in the middle, the workforce is stuck in the middle, right? And the prime age workforce is shrinking as an overall percentage of the workforce. On the oldest end of the spectrum, you have those born before the baby boom. Now, by the way, I'm going to give you the numbers problem, but the numbers I'm going to give you, if I did 41 countries, wow, 41 countries. Nice work. That's cool. You're supposed to clap now. 41 countries. Right, we're clapping for all of our international friends. But if I did 41 countries, I'd have to use PowerPoint, right? So I'm gonna give you numbers for the United States, Canada. It's pretty good for most of Europe, for Eurasia, Japan, and so those are the numbers. I will give you the global footnote. Is East Asia is younger, South Asia is younger. Latin America is younger still. Africa is youngest. But right now, in most of the workforce that's represented in this room, there are 6 generations working side by side. The oldest, most experienced people in the workforce today are those born before the baby boom, those born before 1946. So anyone in the room born before 1946, raise your hands, please. Come on, anyone? We got anyone? None. We can say anything we want about them then. But okay, so they're the oldest, most experienced people. They're still about 0.5% of the workforce. And then the much vaunted baby boom. Okay, how many people in the room were born 1946 to 1964? Baby boomers, raise your hands. Come on, raise your hands. Come on, you can still raise them, raise them. Joe, I want to have your group hug. See, there are stereotypes about all generations. And of course, I'm about to make vast generalizations about tens of millions of people at a time. Please forgive me. There are as many stories within each generation as there are people. But baby boomers, I got news for you. You are down. So the baby boom is 18 years, right? So it comes in 2 waves. Those born between 1946 and 1954 are now about only 5% of the workforce. Raise your hands if you're a real grown-up. Come on, raise your hands. 1946 to 1954, and then those born, they're the ones who are like, I'm a real baby boomer, not like these younger people. Right? How about the ones born 1955 to 1964? Raise your hands. There's more of them. They're like, well, I'm not like those older people. I'm still apparently a baby boomer, but I was, I didn't grow up like they did. And that's only 11% of the workforce. Now, the much vaunted baby boomers. Here's the quick memo, right? Headline, the grown-ups are leaving. Okay, so baby boomers, raise your hands again, right? And I bet a lot of you are plotting your exit from the workforce, right? You certainly have it in the light at the end of the tunnel, right? The grown-ups are leaving. In that age segment, we have the collective skill, knowledge, wisdom, institutional memory, relationships, and the last vestiges of the old-fashioned work ethic. What are we going to do when they leave? I was in a boardroom not long ago where I got to this point, and you know how board members are. They're like, cut to the chase. So what's your advice? They're leaving. What are we supposed to do? I said, here's my number one piece of advice. Worry. You should worry. The grown-ups are leaving. On the other end of the spectrum, the workforce is getting younger. Those born 1997 and later are now 18% of the workforce. How many people in the room born 1997 or later? Raise your hands. There's a few of them. I'll ask you to be my reality check, please. If I'm saying stuff that makes sense to you, please nod and smile so the others can see. I also want to hear from you if you disagree with me. Instant message me on TikTok or something. All right. Okay, no, seriously, I do want to hear from you if you disagree with me. By the way, the youngest people in the workplace today, at least in North America, were born in, are you ready for this? 2009. With a note from their parents, of course. Right, but think about it. Where were you in 2009? Right, a bunch of you are like, I was at this meeting in a room like this. They were getting born. And on the youngest end of the spectrum, there's a whole new attitude coming to work. Right, in the middle, there's a gap. Right, how many people in the room were born 1978 to 1989? Millennials, raise your hands. Look at them. The millennials are now the prime age workforce. And of course, full disclosure, I was born in June 1967. For the baby boomers, that was the month that Sgt. Pepper was released. A little bit of perspective. But how many people in the room were born 1965 to 1977? Gen Xers, raise your hands. Look at that. We are now the senior executives. Raise your hands. Come on, we're becoming the aging workforce. The oldest Gen Xers are going to turn 60 this year. Are you with me? Remember when we started out, the older, more experienced people were like, where do you get this attitude? Remember the late 80s and the early 90s? You're disloyal. You have a short attention span. You don't want to work as hard. You demand immediate gratification. You want everything on a silver platter, and you want it right now. Sound familiar? See, there's a long-range term of art we use to describe this phenomenon. We call it kids today. And the question is, how much of this is just about being young? And how much of this is truly generational difference? And the answer is, it's about 50-50. Right? Everybody starts out young. You go through those early stages of your life and career. You get older. But in addition to those life stages, what makes generational difference different is it's what's happening. It's the accidents of history that are occurring as we're getting older. Right? Those first wave millennials. Raise your hands again if you were born, say, 78 to, I don't know, middle of the 80s. Raise your hands. Right? Okay, 89. And then how about if you were born 89 to 96? Raise your hand, second wave millennials. Right, the first wave millennials, they grew up in the 90s. It's like, we had defeated the Soviet Union. There was one superpower. It was peace and prosperity for all. There was a foosball table in every teeming space. Right? We were inventing magical business models. Remember the first Gen Xers? Remember the first waves of the dot-coms? Right? We can make money without services and products. This is going to be great. right? But then if you were a second wave millennial, you grew up in the 2000s, right? It was war and fear of terrorism, fear of environmental decay, economic vicissitudes. But if you're a Gen Zer, right, if you were born in the late 90s, right, all they've known is uncertainty. Some people say, they're just like the millennials. But they're not. They're more like children of the 1930s, if children of the 1930s had been raised by helicopter parents on steroids, and if they had learned how to think, learn, and communicate while attached to handheld supercomputers, right? The last one in's a rotten egg. No, Johnny doesn't like to be the rotten egg. Well, that's why it's the last one in. Run faster, Johnny, right? Everyone gets a trophy. We're all winners here. That's a little confusing when you get back to planet Earth or when you get to the workplace. Right, welcome aboard. Well, I've been to your website. There's a few things I think you should change about the company. Right, well, you've been here for 5 minutes. Well, I don't think I can work on Thursdays. And can I bring my dog to work? Because he gets lonely at home. Where do they get this attitude? The numbers problem in a nutshell looks like this. On the oldest end of the spectrum, the workforce is aging. On the youngest end of the spectrum, the workforce is getting younger, and they've got a whole new attitude, and there's just not going to be enough of them. As your incoming chairman of the board said, there's going to be a shortage of skilled talent for the foreseeable future, especially at the youngest end, where your incoming workforce comes. They're going to be in greater demand than supply for the foreseeable future. And that is the numbers problem in a nutshell. The second thing that's different is there's a whole new mindset sweeping across the workforce. The people in the workplace of the past, success-minded people, they thought you hitch your wagon to the star of an established organization, you pay your dues, you climb the ladder, you do as you're told, you keep your head down, you keep your mouth shut, you wait for the boss to notice you, you wait for the system to take care of you, and in the long run, the system will take care of you, so you wait. And that long-term vesting reward did so much of the work of managing people for you. Right? You're willing to make one short-term sacrifice after another, to break a few eggs, make some mistakes, and in the long run, the system will take care of you. But nobody trusts the system to take care of them anymore. If you want a super executive summary of how the new workforce is thinking, the workplace of the past, it was long-term and hierarchical. The workforce of the future is short-term and transactional. What do you want from me today, tomorrow, and this week? What do you have to offer me today, tomorrow, and this week, this month, next month, this year, next year? One of the questions we ask people every single day in our interviews is, are you loyal to your employer? Are you loyal to your employer? Okay, the oldest, most experienced people, we ask them, are you loyal to your employer? Oh yeah, loyalty is my core value. But it seems like loyalty is dead. Anyone here say that? Hear anyone say that? Loyalty is dead? Right? You ask, say, Gen Xers, millennials, are you loyal to your employer? They say, well, it depends on what you mean by loyal. That's what you were thinking, right? You ask Gen Zers, are you loyal to your employer? They are the most likely to say yes. We say, are you loyal to your employer? Yes. Are you sure? Because we thought you were going to say no. Our interviews aren't 100% scientific. Right? Are you loyal? Yes. How loyal? Very loyal. Where do you think you'll be in 6 months? Oh, that depends on my best offer. We call it just-in-time loyalty. Right? And it's not the kind of loyalty you get in a kingdom. It's the kind of loyalty you get in a free market. But what do you get in a free market? The answer is whatever you can negotiate. Whatever you can negotiate. And so, welcome aboard. I don't want to work on Thursdays. They don't want that necessarily on a silver platter. They just want to know, what do I need to do to get that? And it doesn't mean you can't employ them for the long term. You can. What it means is, if you're going to employ them for the long term, it's going to be high maintenance. If you're going to get high performance out of them, it's going to be high maintenance. Yes, you've got to invite them in, right? That was so beautiful. Invite them in. Maybe they'll catch the bug. Maybe they'll be infected by a love of mission, right? You guys have a mission and a passion. We work with a lot of mission-driven organizations. Our number one client since 1995 has been the United States Armed Forces. We love mission-driven organizations. But today's young people, they also want to know, what do I get? And it's not because they're disloyal. It's because they're trying to take care of themselves and their families. The new free agent mindset is nothing new. What's new about that? It's the great old American or Western value of self-reliance. It's just made new in a new way by globalization and technology, and it's made possible in a whole new way, and it's made necessary by uncertainty. In an uncertain environment, it makes less and less sense to think long-term and hierarchical. It makes more and more sense to think short-term and transactional. And that's the third thing that's different about generational difference today. It's not just the young people. For the older, more experienced people here, thanks for keeping your poker face. I know you might be sitting next to your boss, but let's face it. How many of you are thinking like free agents too? Not because you're disloyal, but because you have to take care of yourself and your family. Right? One of the things about young people is most of the time, older, more experienced people can look at the younger, less experienced people and say, yeah, but you're going to grow up and get more like me. You're going to grow up and get more like me. Every so often in history, things are changing so much so fast, that doesn't happen. They're not going to grow up and get more and more like us. We're getting more and more like them. How many of you are thinking more short-term and transactional? If you're sitting next to your boss, keep your poker face. But let's face it, what do you want from me today, tomorrow, this week, next week, this month, next year? No hard feelings. I got to take care of myself and my family. See, that's the third thing. We are living through the most profound changes in our economy, society, culture, and workplace than any time since the Industrial Revolution. And that's true for people of all ages. The only difference is that this profound accident of history is hitting us all at different life and career stages. And for the youngest, least experienced people, they've never known it any other way. They've never known it any other way. Oh, we talk to young people every single day. And they'll tell us, oh yeah, so, I showed up and, I had this guy says, hey, welcome aboard. Hey, stick with me and here's where you're going to be in 5 years. And this one young person said, I was dying to turn around and say to that guy, I hate to tell you, pal, but you don't know where you're going to be in 5 years. And I thought, wow, from the mouth of babes, right? They're onto something. Right? One young person we interviewed was telling us how she showed up and she was really excited and she was coming in early, staying late. She was asking her boss, hey, I got my work done. Hey, how about some of your work, please? And somebody took her aside and said, cool your jets. Nobody really takes you seriously around here until you've been here for a couple years. And she said, I thought it was so weird they thought I would stay someplace for a couple years where nobody was taking me seriously. The biggest myth about today's young people is they want to be humored. They want everything on a silver platter. They want to be humored. They want work to be fun or something. No. Young people want to be taken seriously. And they're operating in an environment of uncertainty. They are in greater demand than supply, and they will be for the foreseeable future. They're thinking short-term and transactional, not because they're disloyal, but because that's the only way that it makes sense to think. And they're not going to grow up and settle down and get more like us. We're going to get more and more like them. So what does this mean for you? Here's what it means. This has a profound effect on the whole range of human capital management strategy. On the oldest end of the spectrum, the issues are succession planning, knowledge and wisdom transfer, high potential identification and leadership development. On the youngest end of the spectrum, it's attraction, selection, onboarding, up-to-speed training, And there's a different retention issue on the youngest end of the spectrum. On the youngest end of the spectrum, the issue is you bring in young people. They've got technical training, let's hope. We teach them how to use their technical training in the real world. You develop them and develop them. No sooner have you started developing them than you have to start worrying that they go out into the free market for talent and sell your development investment to the highest bidder. We call it the development investment paradox. It's very frustrating. And there are all kinds of hidden issues there. Right? Because managers hesitate to interact with them. Senior people hesitate to interact with them because they think, how long are you even going to be here? It's easier for me to just do it myself. Right? In the middle, there's an issue hiding below the radar, and that is what we call the undermanagement epidemic. Leaders, managers, and supervisors are operating in a high-pressure environment with a high-maintenance workforce. And too many leaders, managers, and supervisors are not doing the work of leading, managing, and supervising. They're not guiding, directing, supporting, and coaching people. They're the kind of managers who tell you, hey, if something goes wrong, then you'll hear from me. Hey, I'm not going to hold their hand. Nobody held my hand. If something goes wrong, then they'll hear from me. If that's you or your managers, that means every time people see you coming, it's bad news. Leadership should not be bad news, it should be good news. Now let's start on the oldest end of the spectrum, right? The oldest end of the spectrum, the issues are succession planning and knowledge and wisdom transfer, high potential identification, and leadership development. Look, the grown-ups are leaving, and they're taking with them the collective skill, knowledge, wisdom, institutional memory, relationships, and the last vestiges of the old-fashioned work ethic. You should be worried about that. So what are you going to do about that? The bleeding edge solution we're seeing on the oldest end of the spectrum is what we call flexible retention. These are the oldest people in your workforce. They're the most experienced. They're the people you know the best and trust the most. They're the ones you should be most afraid of losing. So instead of having them leave, you have them leave somewhat. Would you like to work part-time, flex time, telecommute, leave and come back? Go work for the competition, we'll still let you come back, just don't leave. That's flexible retention. Now, I was a while back talking to the General Staff of the United States Army at Leavenworth, and I was briefing them on bleeding edge practices and retention. I was telling these fellows how, in the private sector, when you have the most experienced people, you're afraid of losing them. They're using this approach, flexible retention. Would you like to work part-time, flex time, telecommute, leave and come back, go work for the competition, we'll still let you come back. One of the generals raised his hand and said, son, when our employees go work for the competition, we shoot them. Now, I tell you that for two reasons. Everyone's lost great people, and you'd like to shoot them, and it's nice to know that somebody can. But I'm also telling you that because the generals then started whispering, and then they started saying, hey, look, we invented flexible retention. We call it the reserve army. Build your own reserve army. Those older, more experienced people with that irreplaceable skill, knowledge, wisdom, institutional memory, relationships, and the last vestiges of the old-fashioned work ethic. Retain part of them. And let them work part-time, flex time, telecommute. And by the way, teach your organization to be flexible with them. Mark my words, with the youngest, least experienced people, if you do not learn more flexible employment practices, you have no prayer of retaining them. But why learn on the youngest, least experienced people whom you know the least well and you're just getting to know? Why not develop those skills for your organization, those habits for your organizations, those systems for your organization of flexible employment on the oldest end of the spectrum and keep those older, more experienced people longer? Well, that's flexible retention. Build your own reserve army. Borrow a staffing strategy from the greatest fighting force in the history of the world, the United States Armed Forces. By the way, I know we have in 41 countries, there's a lot of allies in the room. God bless you, and thank you for being great allies. Okay, then the next issue is what knowledge transfer, but what we've been looking at and what we've been working on with our clients is not just knowledge transfer. Because look, with technology, we figured out how to document standard operating procedures. right? We figured out how to document recurring problems and repeatable solutions, right? We've figured out how to document, especially in the technical world, that kind of knowledge transfer. What's really tricky, though, is wisdom transfer and relationship transfer. And for that, there's only one way, and that is to get the older, more experienced people highly engaged with identified high potentials, to be helping to transfer relationships to them, and teaching them those hidden elements of wisdom, those things that only come, bless you, from experience, that only come from experience and are so hard to document. Those lessons that come from multiple perspectives, having had multiple experiences, made mistakes. So one of the things that we recommend, and you can do this with your Reserve Army older, more experienced people, is have them run wisdom transfer programs, relationship transfer programs. And that ends up being the core of real succession planning. Now, for those of you in the room who are doing succession planning, maybe you do a 9-box where every year you rate people. That's in larger, more complex organizations. In small organizations, sometimes it's just that guy. but too often it occurs, it's what we call two-dimensional succession planning. It occurs on a piece of paper, and it goes in a drawer. And then by the time you pull that document out, you say, well, where are these people? Oh, they left a long time ago, right? Or this one turned out to be a loser, or whatever, right? Succession planning has to be a contact sport. And the key is doing not just high potential identification, but high potential identification and real hands-on leadership development and what we call three-dimensional succession planning, really working closely to transfer relationships and wisdom. That's at the oldest end of the spectrum. On the youngest end of the spectrum, you have this incoming workforce. And, once you invite them in, you got to know what to say to them, right? Because some people, if you say, hey, this is my passion, maybe it'll be your passion. Well, some people are going to get the bug. And that's great advice. But a lot of people, they're just going to be trying to figure out, sometimes you don't know your passion until you start to learn about something. You don't always know your passion. Sometimes young people tell me they're searching for their passion. And I tell them, well, how do you know if you're passionate about something until you do it for a while, right? So once you got to decide, what is it you're selling? What is your attraction message? The key to recruiting is you have to attract a sufficiently large applicant pool that you can be selective. And too many organizations are still using the old attraction messages. Come join us, pay your dues, climb the ladder, right? In the long run, the system will take care of you. Welcome to the family. Right? Let's tell you all about our tried and true organization. Welcome to the family. Right? If that's your message, you got to wonder why young people are going to come work for you, because that's going in one ear and out the other. 5 years to them is a fantasy. They want to know, what do you want from me today, tomorrow, this week? What do you want from me this month, this year, and next year? It doesn't mean you can't keep them. But they want to know, what's the deal around here? Right? What do you want from me? What do you have to offer me? And some people who do what I do will tell you, today's young people, they don't care about money. I don't know what planet those folks live on or what color the sky is in their world. But here on planet Earth, people care about money. They definitely care about money. But for young people, money is a threshold issue. They want to know they're going to get paid as much as they could working for a similarly situated employer in similar circumstances, and they want to know that they're going to get paid enough to pay their bills. When it comes to money, what they really want to know is, what would I need to do to earn more? What would I need to do to earn more? And the other thing they want to know is, what else? Right? What else? And here are the things they care about other than money. More control over their own schedule, right? right? A lot of young people will work more if they have some control over when. Do you know I named this the Amazon approach to flexible scheduling? Does anyone know this? This is one of my things I named. It's you can work any 80 hours a week you want. Right? Amazon approach to flexible scheduling. So they care about that. More control over my own schedule, more control over who I work with. I don't want to work with Mr. Blue. I want to work with Mr. Red. Number 3 is location and workspace. Number 4 is learning opportunities. And number 5 is task choice. And it's not just task choice, but how many ditches do I have to dig until I get to earn a more interesting task? So if you're shaping an attraction message, you got to think, what do we have to offer you? What's it going to be like? But here's the thing. Do not sell something you cannot deliver. The number one cause of early voluntary departures among people under the age of 30 is buyer's remorse. You know, they told me it was going to be this, this, and this in the interview process, and it turned out that it was a whole different job when I got there. Now, sometimes these hires fail because you have buyer's remorse. And that's because in the interview process, you might see a whole bunch of red flags, but you are so desperate to hire somebody, you're like, well, he came to the interview in his pajamas and he kept checking his phone, but we're going to hire him anyway. Right? Red flags, don't hire that person. It's a whole lot better to leave a position unfilled than to hire the wrong person. But do not sell something you cannot deliver. And I'll tell you what our shortcut is in selection. Once you have convinced yourself you want this person, and you've convinced this person that they might want to come work for you, right? Then the key is selection. And look, everyone does, interviews and stuff. There's one shortcut in the selection process. Once they know they want to come here, try to scare them away. Once you know they want to come work for you and you want them, try to scare them away. Tell them all the downsides of the job and see who's left. They're the ones who are worth hiring. And then you got to get them on board and up to speed. Way too many organizations, they're short-staffed. Somebody shows up for work on day one, they're like, I'm here! And people are like, oh yeah, we forgot you were starting today. Here's some documents from HR, now go sit over there. And they're like, but I've been to your website. There's a whole bunch of things we have to change. Yeah, right. Go start moving your arms and legs and shadow Mr. Blue. Pretty soon you'll be doing what everybody else is doing. That is not orientation. And the number 2 cause of early voluntary departures is a weak onboarding process. A weak onboarding process. The best onboarding process I know of is, the United States Marine Corps hires a lot of young people. They have an onboarding process. Perhaps you've heard of it. It's 13 weeks, 24 hours a day. Young people, they walk through that portal on day one, and, nobody says, hey, welcome aboard. We're going to have you work only in your area of passion and strength. We're going to seek to understand your deep inner motivations and praise you no matter what you do, and we're going to help you find a best friend at work. No! They grab a hold of them, and they never let them go. Grab is a metaphor. Do not touch your young employees. But you got to borrow that model, right? Young people walk through that portal on day one. And they're making a connection to the mission, a connection to the team. They're tearing them down and rebuilding them. They're teaching them how to follow. Nobody teaches people how to follow anymore. We'd imagine managing a Marine if nobody had put him through boot camp. They wouldn't know what to do. Right? And in the private sector, which, start moving your arms and legs. Pretty soon you'll be doing what everybody else is doing. Don't let those valuable new hires come in and start flailing. You got to program day one, week one, month one, program. Now, the number 3 cause of early voluntary departures is a handoff to a weak manager. no matter how good your hiring and selection process is, no matter how good your onboarding and up-to-speed training is, if you hand them off to a manager who's like, nobody held my hand, figure it out, kid. I'll see you, in 2 years or so, we'll see if you're still here, and then we'll take you seriously. Remember, these are people who've been closer to their parents, teachers, and counselors than any generation in history, right? They have helicopter parents on steroids. Right? They show up on day one and somebody's like, hey, figure it out, kid. Nobody held my hand. They're like, bad grown up. Right? And also, isn't this your organization? But the problem is managers are short-staffed. And they're like, it's just easier for me to do it myself. And if I spend a whole bunch of time training this person, then I'm going to fall prey to the development investment paradox. They're going to go right out the door with my development investment, and then I'm going to have to start all over again. Right? This is a problem in every organization. But if you have tried hiring young people and it hasn't worked, those are the top 3 causes of early voluntary departures, by which I mean in the first 2 years. And the reality is, first 2 years is really important because that's about when they become valuable. That's about when they become valuable. That's why they're leaving. Those are the issues on the youngest end of the spectrum. In the middle is the undermanagement epidemic, hiding in plain sight. That, now millennials are the prime age workforce now. That's just weird. But raise your hands again, millennials. Right? Now keep your poker face, because millennials and Gen Xers are the worst offenders when it comes to undermanagement. And it looks like this, right? I just don't have time to manage people. So, nobody held my hand, and I'm gonna let them figure it out, and if something goes wrong, then they'll hear from me. Right? So here are the 4 most common forms of communication most managers have with most of their people on the front lines. Right? When something's not going wrong. Right? They're hands off, right? But they touch base. How's everything going? Is everything on track? Are there any problems I should know about? How's everything going? Is everything on track? Are there any problems I should know about? Those 3 questions tell the manager that, they're talking to people, but those questions tell you nothing. How's everything going? Just fine, everything on track. Basically, any problems I should know about? Well, I think it's under control. Have you ever wondered why they call in the middle of the night, everything's melting down? And you're like, I've asked you every single day. But you're calling me in the middle of the night, everything's melting down. And what too many managers spend way too much of their management time fighting fires, solving problems that never should have happened in the first place. When I ask managers, why don't you have time to manage? Most of them tell me, I come in every day and then I spend all day firefighting. And it makes me feel kind of important. Right? Some of them like it. Right? They get into it. Only I can fight that fire. But you remember our most famous park ranger in America, who's a talking bear. For those of you from the other 40 countries, we have a very famous park ranger who's a talking bear. It's true. Americans, true? See? Sometimes people from other countries are like, what? And his name is Smokey, and he's famous for saying a lot of things. One of the things he's famous for saying is, it's a whole lot easier to prevent a fire than it is to put one out. The guy's a genius, and he's a bear. Okay? So the thing about management is fire prevention. Fire prevention. What managers should be doing is not, how's everything going? Is everything on track? Are there any problems I should know about? But rather, what did you do? How did you do it? Show me. What are you going to do it? What are you going to do? How are you going to do it? Show me your plan. Hey, let's make a plan. Come back. Hey, how did it go? Did you do it? Let me help you avoid problems. Let me help you solve problems. Let me help you plan resources. Let me help you make sure you're doing things the right way the first time. Management takes hard work. And when we ask managers, well, how come you're not doing this? The number one thing they say is, I don't have time. But I'll tell you what our research shows. Hands-off management costs you a bundle. And that problem really is hiding. right? Problems occur that didn't have to occur. Problems get out of control that should have been put out easily, should have been solved easily. Resources are squandered. People go in the wrong direction for days, weeks, or months on end. Low performers hide out and collect paychecks. Mediocre performers mistake themselves for high performers. Hey, I think I'm one of the high performers. High performers get frustrated and think about leaving, and managers end up doing tasks that should have been and could have been delegated to someone else. But the managers aren't doing the work. Right? They're not spending time with their people, guiding, directing, supporting, and coaching them. They're not problem solving and resource planning. Right? Way too many managers are way too hands off. And that, after the selection, onboarding, and up-to-speed training and handoff to a manager, that's where the real issue is. Every single one of you should be auditing your management culture. When I ask people, what's your number one asset? How many of you have said about your organization, people are our number one asset? Raise your hands if you've said that. People are our number one asset. Raise your hands. People are our number one asset. How do you manage them? Oh, we're winging it. I've been waiting all day to say that too. Winging it, right? Okay. Right. I mean, imagine if you had accountants who you were like, hey, money's really important. How are you managing it? I'm winging it. I don't like the general ledger system. I keep the numbers right up here. You'd be like, well, we're not going to let you squander that asset, and we'll be visiting you in prison. Right? But people are our number one asset. They're just people. How do you manage them? I got my own style, see? My people are used to it. Great. See, one of the things that happens in the private sector is nobody teaches new leaders how to manage. We put people in charge of other people because they've demonstrated that they're responsible, they're good at their job, they're not going anywhere. We teach them how to do a little extra paperwork, but nobody ever teaches them how to do the people work. And then every once in a while, we send them to a seminar. And some guy like me is like, okay, seek to understand their deep inner motivations. Right? And people are like, I'm not qualified to do that. Are their deep inner motivations any of my business? Nope. Right? Have them work only in their area of passion and strength. Well, who's going to do all the work? Praise them no matter what they do. Well, even if they do something wrong, that doesn't make sense. Help them find a best friend at work. Well, really? I have asked thousands of people, do you want your boss to help you find a best friend at work? Nobody has ever said yes. And yet, this is the leading leadership literature over the last 30 years. And here's what I want to leave you with. Before I left a little time for questions, and I started late, so I'm going till about 1:15, just so you know. Unless you want me to stop. Here's what I want to leave you with. You got to look at every single person in your organization who's in a leadership role. And you got to figure out, what are they doing? Right? Are they practicing false empowerment or real empowerment? False empowerment is, hey, take a crack at it. Do it however you think it should be done. I wouldn't want to be a micromanager. Sink or swim, son. Right? Real empowerment is guiding, directing, supporting, and coaching, spelling things out, breaking things down, setting people up for success. Are they practicing false fairness or real fairness? False fairness is, if I did that for you, I'd have to do it for everyone. Really? Are you a communist? Why would you do it for everyone? Right? If I did that for you, why? Well, how about what's really fair is recognizing everybody's a special case and tuning into each person and figuring out, what does that person need from me? What do I need from that person? Right? The difference between false nice guy syndrome and real nice guy syndrome. Please forgive me, I use the term guy as a gender neutral term. Don't cancel me. Right, false nice guy is, I wouldn't want to tell you what to do. Right, but it turns out if you take low performers out of the equation, when people think their boss is a jerk, it's almost always because the boss is too weak, not because the boss is too strong. The boss doesn't keep track of what's going on, so they don't make good decisions. They don't make it clear this is what's up to you and this is what's not up to you. They don't solve problems before they turn into big problems. They don't talk about the work. And they're not strong before things go wrong. Way too many managers do way too much of their management once they're frustrated and angry and things have gone wrong. Who's at their best when they're frustrated and angry? Have you ever tried arguing with a drunk? Anyone? Just last night. Right? You know why you can't convince a drunk of anything? Anyone? It's because they're drunk. Right? Anger is a drug. It changes your brain chemistry. Why would you wait until you're angry and frustrated to start managing people? Right now, I'll tell you what, our number one asset, I'm going to be hands off until something goes really wrong. Then I'm going to get wasted and go talk to them. Right? Then you're really going to have a problem. Right? There's too much fear of difficult conversations and not enough ordinary conversations to make sure things go right before they go wrong. Management by fire prevention. Mark my words, you don't have time not to do this. The problem hiding in plain sight in your organization is almost surely under management. The number one thing you can do is audit your managers and make sure that they know there's a general ledger system for managing, just like there is for accounting. And make sure your leaders, managers, and supervisors are trained not in some flavor of the month, but get in the habit of managing people every day, have high structure, high substance team huddles and one-on-ones, spell out expectations every step of the way, practice real situational leadership, turn managers into coaches. Right? You're not the referee calling balls and strikes. You're out! Home run! You're the coach. Your job is to make them win. And that is hard work. Real empowerment, real fairness, real nice guy syndrome. Real accountability is a process, not a slogan, and it makes everyone stronger. And the more you create real accountability, the more you'll be able to offer real flexibility and generosity. And you'll be able to not just infect those young people with the bug, but you'll be able to retain them one person at a time, one day at a time, because every single person is a special case. And you got to start managing people that way. Okay, I've given you a super executive summary of 32 years of research. I've left 600 seconds for thoughts, comments, and questions. Do you want me to take them? Yes. I did start late. So if you have a thought, a comment, or a question, there are people with microphones. And also, I'm going to give you my email address just in case you have a question you don't get to ask here. My email address is brucet@rainmakerthinking.com. If you send me an email, I hereby promise I'll respond. I type faster than I talk. But if you have a question or a thought or a comment, this is the time. Thought. Yes, we got one over there, and you ask a question, you get a book. Go ahead. Holler, because we're running out of time. What book did she get? Not everyone gets a trophy, but you do.
First of all, your presentation was fantastic.
Oh, golly, thank you.
And then I have a question just as a Gen Z in the workforce.
Yes.
You talked about how it's very similar, how a lot of older people are saying that the younger generation is spoiled, et cetera, and that's kind of always been the case. But a lot of things that I've been seeing lately are companies are actually saying verbatim that they're refusing to hire Gen Z people without really delving into what your presentation was about. And I was just curious, as from like millennials and Gen Xers, were the silent generation and the boomers also saying that they were refusing to hire their generation, or is that like a new thought process?
Well, there's a few things. I gave a presentation at a technical conference recently like this, and the two people who had spoken before me, one was speaking about robotics and the other was speaking about artificial intelligence. And the first question I got there was, how long are we going to have to employ people? Right? Right? Maybe we could just like obviate the whole thing. So look, here is the through line. People are weird. Okay? People are peculiar. And everyone has it's always been tough to manage people. And each new generation always comes along and drives the grown-ups crazy. But the three things that are different are young people with technical training are in greater demand than supply for the foreseeable future. The whole mindset of the workforce has changed. So it used to be the default presumption was you pay your dues, you climb the ladder, you stay someplace for a long time, you keep your head down, you keep your mouth shut, you accept authority. But we live in an environment where nobody respects institutions anymore, right? Our greatest institutions, where individuals know they're gonna have to take care of themselves and they're not sure how. And remember, the economy has changed so much. The gig economy, what pandemic accelerated work from home by 30 years, right? And so, we're in so much flux, and change is scary. And look, my friends at Walmart, if you've been to Walmart, we've done a lot of work for the folks in Bentonville, and if you walk into a Walmart, there are a lot of grown-ups greeting you, Well, that strategy runs out of, at a certain point, you see how that strategy runs out. It's like at the nuclear weapons labs. When I got to the nuclear weapons labs 25 years ago, there were scientists who had been there since the Manhattan Project. Well, some of the directors thought, these guys are going to start forgetting stuff. We're going to need new young scientists, right? Eventually, you need new blood. So, the reason you have that look, the future is mine, is because regardless of how much the grown-ups are frustrated, the future is yours. So you're going to make history, so please make it good history. We got another one, yes. And you got a book? Go ahead, holler. What is he getting?
Bridging the soft skills gap.
Bridging the soft skills gap.
Sounds fantastic, thank you. We've recently moved our shop, 12 people, to get everybody more aligned with the same 8 to 4:30 and less of the custom flexible arrangements, because it seems necessary for the efficiency of the shop. How do you balance letting people flex their hours or their certain arrangement? Some people want 410s, all these different things, with the need to have a shop where people are working together and in teams and predictability?
Yeah, great question. Business comes first, the work comes first. And, look, just like it makes no sense to focus on having a body in a chair during certain hours, as opposed to productivity, quality, attitude, right? If you had to choose between a body in a chair during certain hours or high productivity, high quality, great attitude, which would you choose, right? Everyone chooses the concrete outcomes. So the work has to come first. And the reason to be flexible is to be able to attract better people, to be able to keep them working more, better, faster, and happy to contribute what we call discretionary performance, and to keep them longer. So it's a business equation, but the work has to come first. I mentioned Walmart. You can't. Hey, I'd like to, work. I'd like to, work the morning shift, but I like to come in around 11. Well, you can't be the one who opens the store if you have a flexible schedule. Or how about working from home? Come on over to my house, I'll sell you some pants. That's ridiculous, right? Or bring your dog to work. Well, some places that's great. Why not bring your dog to work? What's the matter with you? You don't like dogs? But, if you work in a laboratory, well, the dog scares the mice, right? So just, the work has to come first. So that's the equation. You have to be as flexible as you need to be to get better people, keep them longer, get more work and better work out of them, and have them, you want people to stay and want to stay. Okay? Does that help some? We got one. And just tell me when you want me to stop.
The book is Hot Management.
Hot Management. And we're running out of time. What's the other book in your hand?
Okay, it's okay to be the boss.
It's okay to be the boss. Give them both.
Okay.
It's okay to be the boss, sir.
I've been interviewing possible candidates for technicians and been trying to explain to them vacation time, sick time. I've heard we've got to rename it as PTO.
Paid time off?
Yeah, that's what we call it. I didn't know what that was until I was told what paid time off is.
Bless you.
Right, so I'm trying to figure out, should I just present it as PTO or vacation sick time?
Well, people, that's malleable no matter what, right? And so I think what you have to do is you have to figure out what is the equation. Look, some organizations offer no flexibility in time. Right? But just, hey, we just can't do that. Right? Some organizations can't pay very much money. Some organizations like, hey, sorry, I know you want to work with Mr. Red, you're working with Mr. Blue. Right? Some organizations, all we got here is digging ditches. Learning? None. Right? None for you. Right? And you know, well, if you have nothing to offer, then why would anyone go work for you? Right? So you just have to figure out how to build a value proposition. And the reason to do special things for people is because the more your rewards are unusual, like money, everyone pays in money. I can always look across the street and compare. But, you know, if you have a really special paid time off program, you know, give people scheduling flexibility. If you're, let me bring my dog to work, whatever it is, right? It's much harder for me to compare that to another employer across the street. It's what economists call a unique value proposition, right? People tell me all the time, oh, today's young people, you know, you can't keep them and you can't keep them happy, and they're making demands all the time. All these crazy demands. I don't want to work on Thursdays. Well, no, don't you get it? They keep telling you what they want. Right? You want to hire them, you want to keep them, you want to keep them happy. They keep telling you what they want. The trick is making sure you get what you need. You don't want to work on Thursday? Here's what I need from you by Wednesday at midnight. Right? There are just way too many employers who they have this policy, but you got a superstar, right, who's bending over backwards and jumping through hoops. And that person's like, I don't want to work on Thursdays. See, in the real world, right, you don't say, oh, if I did that for you, I'd have to do that for everybody. You make the secret deal. Listen, you don't have to work on Thursdays, but don't tell anybody. Right? That's what happens. Why? Because that's the free market. Right, so Thursday comes along. Have you seen Mary? Nope. Next Thursday. Do you know where Mary is? Nope. Right, eventually you get the knock on the door. It's not fair. Mary doesn't have to work on Thursdays. Right, and you're like, well, let me explain. Mary comes in early, stays late, bends over backwards, jumps through hoops, dots her I's, crosses her T's. That's why Mary gets to not work on Thursdays. What do you want? Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays? You want to bring your dog to work, you weirdo? Tell me what you want. Right, I always tell managers, put a billboard in the parking lot. Mary doesn't have to work on Thursdays. Come to my office to find out why. Right, that's how free markets work. So I think the more you get comfortable with the short-term transactional mindset and don't see it as a negative, see it as a positive. Right? Hey, what do you want? What matters to you? What matters to you? And let's talk about how you can keep earning that every day, every week, every month. And by the way, one of the reasons employers default to false fairness, the same for everybody, is because their managers are not practicing real empowerment. If managers are not guiding, directing, supporting, coaching, spelling out expectations, taking notes, writing things down, getting commitments, following up, asking for a commitment, asking for an account, did you do it? Right? If managers are not hands-on coaching, then it's very hard to practice real fairness, right? False fairness and false empowerment go together, right? We'll leave you alone until there's something goes wrong and then we treat everybody exactly the same. But the only beneficiaries are low performers who are hiding. High performers want a boss who knows who they are, knows what they're doing, is in a position to help them do more, better, faster, and earn more of all the things they want. I didn't say it was getting easier. I said it was getting harder to manage people, right? But high performance and high maintenance go hand in hand. And it's not going away. They're not going to grow up and settle down. Every one of us is getting more like them. Listen, please send me an email. Somebody has at least a couple more of my books that they were walking around in case somebody had a question. So seize them if you want that book. That one's called The 27 Challenges Managers Face. Anyway, if you send me an email and you ask me a tough question, I'll probably just send you a book. Thank you so much, because everyone gets a trophy, you know. Thank you so much for giving me part of your day. Thank you so much.
Aero-News Network's coverage of the 68th Annual AEA International Convention and Trade Show, live from Phoenix, Arizona, is brought to you in part by the following sponsors: